Hello, my name's Chris, and today I'm going to share with you some tips on how you can successfully navigate the IELTS Listening Exam. I hope that by the end of the video you will have a clearer idea of how you can achieve a great band score in this test. I know for a lot of candidates the listening test is a nerve-wracking prospect, as you will be asked to listen and write down information at the same time. But there are lots of tips and tricks that you can learn to make it much easier. First, let's briefly go over the structure of the exam. The listening section of the IELTS academic test is divided into 4 parts, each part with 10 questions. So you don't need a mathematician to tell you that there are 40 marks in total. You will get 30 minutes to complete each part of the tests, so that's 2 hours altogether, with an extra 10 minutes to transfer your answers onto the answer sheet at the end. You will hear 4 recordings, 2 conversations and 2 monologues. The first 2 will be based on real life situations, and the second 2 will be based on academia. Now, the exam will test your active listening skills. In other words, how well you can extract meaning from recorded speech in English. First, we will look at all the different things that you can do to prepare for the test in advance. And then we will look at how you can actually score well in the test itself and what you should and shouldn't do during the exam. The first and most important thing you should do is to start preparing a long time before you take the listening test. Get your ears well trained in listening to English, both in monologues and conversations, because the more you get used to listening to English, the easier the test will be on the day. It's really as simple as that. There are a huge number of great ways to listen to English for free, from podcasts, apps, TED Talks, TV programs, to movies, documentaries and audiobooks, for example. And you should try to listen to English spoken in a range of different accents as well before the test. Above all though, British English accents. This is because the recordings tend to feature more British English speakers than any other dialect. But you will certainly also hear accents from other areas, but typically American accents, Canadian accents, Australian and various European accents. Try to do as many listening practice tests as you can before you sit the real test. This way you can keep track of your progress and identify areas where you are losing marks. You can then structure your learning to improve these areas of weakness. Try to practice with official IELTS exam papers as a basis for your learning that you can then complement with the other resources like the ones I mentioned a moment ago. One great trick to familiarize yourself with the test is to first look at the answer booklet and then look at the questions page. Try to work out how the questions are formed and what information they focus on. If you develop this skill enough, you will be able to anticipate in advance many of the questions you will face in the real test, and free up your brain a little while you listen to the recordings. Remember that the last recording of the test is a lecture, so you should also listen to some sample lectures online before the test and practice taking notes as you listen. Familiarize yourself with the classic pattern and structure of lectures and listen out for the commonly used signpost words and phrases, such as "I would like to begin by," or "to conclude my last point," as well as comparing and contrasting words like "in spite of" or "although." There are lots of great resources to listen to online. TED lectures, for example, are very useful as they cover lots of timely, interesting topics and provide a transcription for you to follow. Now, make sure you are really hot on your spelling before you take this test, as incorrect spelling will cost you marks. So, set aside time every day in the weeks before the test to really work on your spelling and test yourself regularly if you can. You can do this with apps like Montessorian, Spelling Master or Grammarly, as well as flashcards, of course, which can also help you memorize the pronunciation of the words you might hear in the recordings. Pay particular attention to commonly misspelled words, even for native speakers. Words like necessary, definite, or accommodation. Try to learn so-called spelling hacks, that is, little word tricks to memorize correct spelling. For example, I before E except after C, which I can remember from school. Remember, vocabulary is key. The larger your English vocabulary, the better you will do in the exam. So you should work hard to continually build up your passive English vocabulary through lots of listening and reading in the weeks before the test. You can then transfer key vocabulary from your passive to your active vocabulary by speaking and writing them repeatedly, or with the help of great vocabulary apps like Duolingo or Quizlet, which offer you fun interactive quizzes and regular prompts. So one of the key skills for this exam is good concentration, because you will be required to listen and write at the same time. You can work to improve your concentration skills before the test through frequent practice and meditation. And there are lots of good apps available to help you with this, such as Headspace and Insight Timer. Now, moving on to the exam itself, there are lots of skills and techniques that will help you to achieve a super band score. First and foremost, try to enter the exam room in a relaxed frame of mind, as you will be able to concentrate better as you listen. After you open the exam paper, you will have a short time, 30 seconds per section, to read the questions before you listen to the recordings. Try to work out the context of the conversation you are about to hear and who will be speaking. In section 1, for example, you often have to listen for numbers, names and addresses. So look at the questions and work out what kind of answer you will write in the space. For example, a number, a name or an address. You can also use this time to underline all the key words you see. Words such as dates, names and places, for example. This will act as a foundation and help guide you as you listen through the recordings. You will find this tactic especially useful in the more difficult parts 3 and 4 of the test. Remember to listen out for synonyms of these key words, and I will discuss synonyms in more detail later in the video. So as you listen to the recordings, keep the questions in the back of your mind, but focus on listening to the recording as a whole. The overall context is more important than listening for individual words or phrases as you try to answer the questions. Make notes in your exam booklet while you listen. But remember, you only receive marks for your answer sheet, not for your exam booklet. So don't waste your time trying to spell the words correctly or making your handwriting neater at this stage, as you will risk missing information in the recording and losing marks. You will have a chance at the end of the exam to check your spelling, grammar and handwriting when you transfer your answers onto the answer sheet. Now, if you miss an answer during the listening, don't spend time thinking about it. Just move on to the next one straight away. So there is nothing you can do, and it may not affect your band score too much anyway. As I said, you will get a chance at the end of the exam to go back and make an educated guess at the answer when you transfer your answers across. Okay, this is an important one. Make sure you keep listening right until the end of the recording, and don't switch off if you think you have already heard the correct answer. Sometimes it can be a trick answer to test if you have listened carefully enough. So sometimes the correct answer can come right at the end of the recording, so be careful about that. Another thing, don't panic if some of the words in the recordings go over your head and you don't understand them. This is normal for non-native speakers. Instead, you should try to listen out for keywords in the recordings and words that relate directly to the questions. You will probably not hear exactly the same vocabulary as the vocabulary from the question, because that would be too easy. So listen out for paraphrasing words and synonyms. For example, if a keyword in the question is accommodation, you should listen out for related words. For example, hotel, guest house, shelter, or overnight. You should also listen very carefully for signpost words and phrases in the recordings. These will help guide you through the answers step by step. Phrases such as, let's begin by discussing, or in addition to that, or moving on from my last point. And these phrases show you when the next answer is coming up. So you should familiarize yourself with classic signpost expressions from previous tests and online practice tests. Okay, so you have now finished the listening part, and it's time to transfer your answers from the exam booklet to the answer sheet. There are a number of things to keep in mind here. Firstly, make sure you are using the correct grammar, especially when it comes to verb tenses. Even if your answer itself is correct, it will be marked as incorrect if the verb tense you used is incorrect. Also, pay attention to the correct use of capital letters. For example, in proper nouns like London or Mexico. If you are worried about when to use capital letters, you are officially allowed to write your answers either all capitalized or all uncapitalized without losing any marks. If you do this, however, make sure you do it consistently in all your answers. Also, pay attention that you transfer your answers correctly and that all the numbers match up. So use all the time you have to read and reread your answer sheet to check. Above all, don't leave any answers blank. You won't lose any marks if you write the wrong answer in the space, so you might as well have a guess. Use all the contextual information you have already and try to work it out. You can only gain marks after all. So, in short, write something, not nothing. Another important point is make sure your handwriting is legible and that it can be easily read and understood by the examiner. So maybe you could ask some native speakers to have a look at your handwriting samples before the test to see if they can read and understand it okay. Finally, keep an eye on the word count. This is an easy and careless way to throw away marks. For example, if you are asked to write no more than one word, then make sure that you only write one word in the answer space. For example, writing the office instead of office would be incorrect in the test. Okay, that brings us to the end of this video. We hope that you will find these tips useful in your ongoing preparation for the IELTS listening exam, and we wish you the very best of luck for it. Thank you for watching. See you again soon.